So what will a nuclear war actually be like? Well, there's two things that you need to know before you can answer that question. And I've done the homework and I've done the research, so let's go take a look. Hi everyone, Rob Russ here. There's two things that you need to know about how a nuclear war will play out. The first thing is doctrine, and then the second thing is the order of battle. So when we talk about doctrine, what we're talking about is how the enemy will apply what they've prepared to nuclear weapons. And when you look at the enemy that we face, so that's China, Russia, North Korea, and in a couple of months when Iran get the bomb, Iran. So I'm gonna put them in there, they're the enemy, okay? So when you look at the way that they apply doctrine, what they do is they use old Soviet doctrine. And what they say is that they're gonna escalate to try and de-escalate a situation. So what does that actually mean? Well, if we're in a kinetic conflict with any of those bad actors and we end up on the battlefield with them and we're beating them, they might escalate, meaning use nuclear weapons of some description to try and de-escalate the situation because we go, oh, we don't want to do that and we don't want to be part of that. They know our doctrine. Our doctrine is to not use nuclear weapons first, because if we shoot nuclear weapons at them, they're going to shoot nuclear weapons at us. And what I mean by them is I mean the Five Eyes. Yeah, so anybody that is on the side of the US is them. If you live in a city today, there's an international airport there or there's a military base there, you've got a nuclear weapon pointed at your head right now. So just about every city in every country on planet Earth has got nuclear weapons pointed at it. So when I say we, that's a catch-all for us versus them. And the four countries that I mentioned are the bad actors and the enemies of everybody else. So when we talk about escalating to de-escalate, these people that are in charge, these lunatics that are in charge, will use these weapons to try and de-escalate a situation. But they also have a first strike policy as well. So they know that we're not going to strike them first, but they have a policy that they are going to strike us first, because they know one really important thing that we have here in the West, which is called launch on warning. So once upon a time, if there was a launch detected, then we would potentially be launching as well. But over the many decades of the Cold War, there was almost some accidents where there was almost complete and total annihilation, only stopped by one or two people because they knew that these things were spurious returns. So in the US, they don't have a launch on warning protocol. What they want to do first is to confirm that they've been hit with a nuclear weapon before they launch a retaliatory strike. But the scary part about that is that the first strike that they're going to use is not going to be a ground burst. It's going to be an atmospheric burst high in the atmosphere with an electromagnetic pulse to turn all of the lights off. And I'll talk about more in that in just a sec. So just to reiterate, the first part that you need to understand is the doctrine. We have a doctrine of mutually assured destruction, means that we're sitting around here waiting to absorb the first strike because we're not going to fire nuclear weapons at anybody first. And their policy is to win a nuclear war. I've read the doctrine. I've read the Russian doctrine. I've read the Chinese doctrine. I haven't read it in Russian or Chinese, but I've read the snippets that matter. And those bits and pieces show that they're training to win a nuclear war. While we're sitting over here, not training to win a nuclear war, we're training to retaliate against anything that they do against us. But we're going to absorb the first strike that comes our way before we do anything. And that first strike might completely decapitate any opportunity that we have to actually retaliate against them. So the next thing you need to understand, the second part of this, is the order of battle. And what I mean by that is when something is happening and a conflict is escalating, how do they operate and what things go first and what goes next? So in Russian doctrine, let's look at that because everything is really based on that. It's about space, air, sea, and then land. So I'm not talking about nuclear weapons here. I'm talking about that's the order of battle and the way that they're going to attack us if we end up in a full-on shooting match with them. Now, we're in a pretty heavy kinetic conflict with them indirectly in the Ukraine, but if that spills over and NATO gets involved in it, you can expect these things to happen because it's well documented and it's well publicized what's out there. You can go and find all of that, but you don't need to because I've summarized it for you here. So when we talk about space, what they're going to do is go after our space-based assets, meaning the satellites, right? So there's more than 1,300 satellites that orbit the Earth, and many of those are military satellites and GPS and all that sort of stuff, and that will be taken off the table by the Russian anti-satellite missile systems that they actually have, and a bunch of other things that they can do to make those satellites irrelevant. The next thing that they do is massive cyber attacks, and all of this happens simultaneously, by the way. So it's space, cyber, sabotage, and the third thing is a nuclear EMP strike. So they're going to fire a nuclear weapon at us, and they're going to explode it high in the atmosphere, and that creates a giant, what's called EMP, electromagnetic pulse. And that EMP fries all of the circuits that are on the ground. So what they'll do, and what they train to do, is to let off one of these nukes high in the atmosphere, about 400 kilometers up in the atmosphere. And if you did that over the continental United States, you'd turn off all of the electricity grid with one weapon. And the enemy, so the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, and it said the Iranians are trying to gather this type of weaponry, have super EMP weapons. They're actually not that destructive. There's not that big a blast that actually happens as a result of these things, but there's a massive electromagnetic pulse that comes out of them. And if they fire a couple of these EMP weapons at us, then they attack us in space, and then they cyber attack us all at the same time, and then there's physical sabotage of our infrastructure all at the same time. What it's going to do is it's going to switch the lights off. So when you understand the order of battle, it's about space, then it's air, then sea, and then land. So when we break down space, we've got all of those things. So that is their first strike policy, and that's how they're training to win a nuclear war. In fact, the Chinese call this type of doctrine and this methodology, this order of battle, they call it non-contact warfare. And they think that it's the most efficient way to get rid of us. And it's the most efficient way to kill people, because if you turn the lights off and destroy all the substations, 9 out of 10 people will die in the first 12 months from starvation, from disease, and also from the collapse of society. So a nuclear war is not going to play out the way that you think it is in a Hollywood movie, where there's a big ground burst and a giant mushroom cloud and all these sorts of things going on. What's going to happen is there's going to be a nuclear weapon that goes off high in the atmosphere that you may not even see, and that electromagnetic pulse is going to fry all of our circuits. And the thing that is really bad is not this thing destroying my equipment here on my desk or my mobile phone or some computer that I've got. What it destroys is the extra high voltage transformers at the substations. Now, if you just go and Google pictures of substations, you'll see that these transformers, they look as big as a house. They look like a locomotive train. And usually in a larger substation, there's 3 transformers that are in there. And what happens is the EMP destroys the circuitry inside of these transformers. And what happens is that causes overload in the network, and it causes all sorts of other things to cascade and cause destruction further downstream of where the EMP strike actually is. So it's a really serious problem. And when you look at big physical infrastructure like that, we don't have replacements of that just sitting around. So that means if they switch the lights off and all of the power goes away, it's going to take a very long time to recover and to fix all of those things, particularly if they're not protected from an EMP strike, which much of it is not. And that is absolute public knowledge that's out there. And so this type of warfare that we're talking about, the doctrine that they have, and then the order of battle that they have, they look at using nuclear weapons to turn the lights off and turn the power off as if it's a version of asymmetric warfare. They're going after our Achilles heel. The power grid is the Achilles heel of Western society. So what does that mean to you? Well, if one old school nuke went off, like something from the 1950s and 1960s, at 400 kilometers of altitude over the middle of the continental United States, the entire power grid will be switched off. But they're not launching old school nukes at us. They're going to be launching super EMP weapons at us. So what that means to you is if the power goes off for an extended period of time, that is your first step in preparing for a nuclear conflict. So what does that mean? You need water, you need food, you need fuel, and you need medicine. Then you need a way to defend yourself, because society is going to come undone quick smart. And you also need a way to render first aid to the people that are around you and the people that might need help that you encounter. So these are your prepping steps. The first thing you need to do is to prepare that the power is going to go off for an extended period of time. And just think about how inconvenient it is when you have a blackout after a storm. Remember that Hurricane Sandy turned the power off on the eastern part of the United States for quite a long time. And then down south in New Orleans, when Hurricane Katrina hit down there, that was even longer. And the whole society there collapsed really quickly. It descended into complete and total chaos and total anarchy. And we've got really short memories of this stuff happening. But when you look at the conflict that we're in now with Russia and the Ukraine, they have a doctrine to escalate, to de-escalate. And their doctrine to escalate, to de-escalate is a first strike, space, cyber, EMP and sabotage attack against our critical infrastructure. The Chinese have the same policy and the North Koreans have the same policy as well. So you need to be prepared, ladies and gentlemen, for the power to go off for an extended period of time. What are you going to do when you run out of water? Have you got local water sources nearby? And if you do, how are you going to filter that water? Have you got the ability to build a fire and boil that water and to do all those sorts of things? What are you going to do? These are the questions that I want to pose to you on this channel. People ask all the time, Rob, you know a lot about this nuclear war stuff. What's it actually going to be like? People have this vision of them sitting in a car on a bridge and the nuke goes off and everybody is annihilated. No, that's not the way it's going to be. The nuke will go off high in the atmosphere. It probably won't affect your car, but it turns off all of the power. And there's an extended blackout that will go for 3 to 6 months, maybe as long as 12 months, because we don't have the parts or the components to fix those high voltage transformers. They only come from 2 countries in the world, Germany and South Korea. And if there's a nuclear EMP strike against the West, against our countries, that happens and the lights go off, and then North Korea invades South Korea, then it only comes from one place in the world, which is Germany. And the Russians build their own as well, but we're not getting any of their transformers anytime soon. So the reality is this might go on for a very, very long time, and that is the total collapse of society. Okay, so I want to sum up this quick video by saying that the baseline preparation that you need is for the power to go off for an extended period of time. And think about it, as a prepper, if you're getting ready for something, whatever it is that you're getting ready for the next pandemic, the next hurricane, the next natural disaster, a nuclear war, whatever it might be, if you're prepared for the power to go off for an extended period of time, you're going to be covered for all of those things. So you need whatever medicine that you need. That's critical, right? I need a bunch of meds. My missus needs a bunch of meds. There's a bunch of things that we actually need to survive. And if suddenly the power goes off and there's no way to acquire that medicine for a bunch of different reasons, then that could be very serious very quickly, and that can escalate quickly as well. Remember the rule of threes, folks. You can't survive without breathing for more than 3 minutes. You can't live without water for about 3 days. You can't live without food for about 3 weeks as well. And the rule of threes is something good that you can prepare for, and it's pretty simple as well. But what I would also encourage you to do is to go away and have a look at some other prepping channels that are out there about how to filter water, about how to make a fire without having matches or a lighter that was convenient to you. What are you going to do in the event that society collapses badly? I was having this conversation with someone the other day and they said, oh, it would be like the Dark Ages. But the reality is it would be nothing like the Dark Ages, because in the Dark Ages, if there was an electromagnetic storm that came from the sun and it damaged all of the electrical infrastructure, it wouldn't matter, because the society didn't actually revolve around electricity or revolve around the convenience of refrigeration and sanitation like that. It just wouldn't matter. People were already farmers, they were already self-sufficient, they already had what they need. So we are at 20 seconds to midnight on this nuclear clock. We've never been closer to a nuclear war, folks. This has never, ever been so likely. This is worse than the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is so close to actually happening. Every other day, some lunatic out there is threatening us all with nuclear annihilation, and everyone just kind of shrugs their shoulders. And eventually, something bad is going to happen, and you need to be prepared for it, folks. So my question to you from this video is, what are you going to do if the lights go off for an extended period of time? I want to finish off here by sharing one crazy point from some Iranian doctrine that I've been reading recently, and it's all about EMP. So they're big advocates for using EMP strikes, and they say that using nuclear EMP, so in other words, using nuclear weapons, is Sharia use of nuclear weapons. It's Sharia compliant. So they're saying that their rules around their religion allow them to use nuclear weapons. And the rationale for it is something along the lines of this, and I'm paraphrasing it as well. What they say is, here in the West, what we've done is we've elevated technology to the level of false gods. And because nuclear EMP doesn't kill people directly, the secondary effects of the EMP is what takes us all out, that it's Sharia compliant use of nuclear weapons, and it's the ultimate divine justice for us here in the West, and certainly for the great Satan in the United States. It's a pretty crazy thing that they actually say, and you have to listen carefully to them when they're threatening us like that. They're saying that they want to attack the United States. They say that Israel is a one-bomb country. Now, Israel's a small country, but it's still a big place. You're not going to wipe out Israel with one nuclear weapon. But what you will do is, if you position it correctly, you'll turn the lights off of all of Israel pretty quickly with one nuclear weapon. But I'm sure the Israelis are a little bit smarter than that, and they've hardened their grid against a nuclear EMP strike. So that actually makes it a little bit of a moot point and irrelevant. But the point is, the Iranians are threatening people with nuclear weapons they don't yet have, but they've also come out and said recently that they're a hop, skip and a jump away from having that plutonium that they need to build the hydrogen bombs that they want to use against the great Satan, and by association, everybody else here in the West. All right, folks, I want to close out this video by inviting you to come on over and join us in the community. It's at nuclearwarsurvivor.com. I want you to be a survivor of this impending nuclear conflict, and you can come on over and join our community, get some exclusive content over there that we don't talk about here on YouTube. Meet some people, learn some techniques, and protect your family. And you can do that for less than $1 a day. It's cheap as chips. There's no excuse for not doing it. Come on over there, support the channel, and learn how you can protect your friends and your family and your loved ones. And do me a favor as well, folks, just scroll down. If you've got any feedback or any comments about this video, put your comments down below. Write me one comment and reply to one comment there as well. And if you've got a question, just put the word question in front of it. We'll see those things there, and people in the community will answer the questions as well. So go ahead and write one comment and one reply to a comment. That helps us out, that helps the algo out as well. And don't forget to come on over and check us out at the community for some more exclusive content that we don't talk about here on YouTube because we don't want to get censored. All right, that wraps it up for this video. We've got another one coming up right here, right now.